Hello there and welcome to JCTV Zimbabwe. Today is the 1st of September, the spring day here in Southern Africa, and we are so much excited. But today we have a very important topic that we want to talk about today, the issue of the land reform program reversal. It's a very critical issue that has raised so many questions. And to help us unpack this whole issue is the ZANU-PF spokesperson in South Africa, Mr. Kennedy Mapesa Mandaza. And he's going to be helping us because from what I've been seeing on the Twitter streets, on the Facebook streets, people are asking the question, did ZANU-PF sell out, or this new dispensation, did they sell out the dream of having our independence or the gains of our independence, which is one of the biggest thing, which is land. We grew up singing this song, our land is our prosperity. Are we now relinquishing this prosperity or this gift that we had of the land? So Mr. Mandaza, welcome.
Thank you, and good evening to the listeners and the viewers.
Yes, Mr. Mandaza, the topic here is we want to understand that from the time when we acquired our independence, the issue of land was a bone of contention. And we know that there was a time when the people or even the war veterans were complaining to the government that what we fought for is land and we haven't gotten that land. We want you as to take us back from when this issue of land was still a bone for contention until it got to 2000. What happened in the interim, and what led us to get to 2000, whereby we started taking the land forcefully?
Thank you very much. I hope I will be able to do justice to the issue which is at stake. But let me start by saying that the issue of land, as we speak right now, has brought a lot of wagging of tongues by many people. But
Yes.
we want to assure the Zimbabwean people that the new dispensation in no way does it intend to reverse the land reform program. It is enshrined in the Constitution. It is also enshrined in our party documents that the issue of land will never be reversed, and there is no intention to do so. Because, as you rightfully said, it is an issue that led to the death of many of our brothers and sisters, fathers and mothers, when they were in the liberation struggle. And it is in no way that any government, particularly the ZANU-PF government, can abdicate that responsibility, that objective for which many people died for. You recall that during the Lancaster House conference, one of the issues that was discussed, which was a thorn in the British and as well as the Rhodesians, was the issue of land. And the ZANU-PF, together with the ZAPU, which was led by Father Zimbabwe, Dr. Joshua Nkomo, they did not relent on this particular issue because it was the sticking point that needed to be resolved. Agreements and undertakings were made, one of which was that during the first 10 years, land was not going to be taken from the whites. There was an agreement that anything that had to be done at that particular time, it had to be done through the willing buyer, willing seller. And we resolved the issue of land during the first 10 years. Over and above that, one of the issues that was also agreed was that if land was to be taken from the colonizers, the British government would commit, together with their allies, they would commit funds which was meant to compensate the whites whose land was going to be taken. And the British government, then led by Margaret Thatcher, agreed in principle that that is what was going to be done. When
Yes.
we finished 10 years, there was no traction in terms of land distribution as well as resettlement, because those who were holding large tracts of land were not willing to release it. And as a result, we went into the era of the 1990s, when we started to move in the direction of trying to resettle the land which was being bought, hoping that the British government will release the money. You recall there was a conference which took place in Victoria Falls, where agreements also were made that people were going to give money to give to the whites. But when the British government changed hands, you recall the story of Tony Blair, the toilet song.
Yes,
it
yes,
was
I know.
the result of the British government, Tony Blair, negating that responsibility. And this angered the majority of the freedom fighters as well as ZANU-PF.
Yes.
Then to see now quite a number of people intending to go on land. It culminated in the late 1990s, around 1999, 98, thereabout, where
Yes, I
we
recall.
started the radicalism in amongst the Zimbabweans in pursuit of trying to address the issue of land.
Yes.
And to the fast track land reform program, which was started by the people of Soswe. And
Yes.
Unzi was one of the people who was so prominent at that particular time. And because of the haphazard nature, since it was the first thing that was happening on the continent of Africa, there was no formula which
Mr. Mapesa, are you still there? I'm trying to get hold of Mr. Mapesa. It seems like we have lost him, but he was talking about how the land reform program was started and what was the sticking point, and he was still giving us explanation on that point. We'll try to get hold of Mr. Mapesa once more and see if we can continue with this conversation. Right. We hope that he's gonna come back. But the question that I want us to look at here is that before we even get Mr. Mapesa back on the line, I want us to watch this video, and I want you to tell me what you think about what the current president or the current government they've proposed. The proposal is that there's going to be land restitution, and you know the word restitution means. It means that you are getting back what you had lost. So in this case, we are asking, did ZANU-PF sell out, or are we seeing a reversal of the gains of freedom? Let us watch these clips by Julius Malema when he was asked the same question on the issue of land redistribution and the compensation of white farmers. We just want to hear his thoughts on that. We're waiting for Mr. Mapesa to be back so that we can continue with this conversation.
If you look at what is happening, you've visited that country, Zimbabwe, for example. The new President Emerson Mnangagwa says he wants to compensate those who those white farmers whose land they were on was expropriated without compensation.
It's reactionary. That's wrong. That's extremely wrong. They've succeeded to expropriate the land without compensation. Let's not give the white farmers money. Let's invite them back to the country and say to them, the state-owned farms can be leased to you for 100 years or 50 years, or if they are Zimbabweans and we're convinced that we need them back, we can reallocate to them particular portions, hectares, to them like we did with African indigenous Zimbabweans. So there shouldn't be compensation for genocide committed against a black people. That is reactionary, and Mnangagwa is playing a very dangerous game, because even the army generals will turn against him. So the best thing is, let him introduce a new model which will invite these people and allocate them some pieces of land through long leases, or allocate some portions of hectares, particularly to Zimbabwe, white Zimbabweans, that we are convinced these are our people.
The central theme of your
against him and of proceeding as such. Shall we go to number 2?
Dr. Hanano Mukoteli from Asahi Shimbun, the Japanese newspaper. So it's been recently announced that in Zimbabwe they'll be giving back the white farmers whose land is taken away from them, they'll finally be compensating them. What is your viewpoint on that? And do you still have the same viewpoint in South Africa, where you believe that white farmers or white people who took land from black people should not be compensated?
It's a sellout position. Mnangagwa is selling out. And I can tell you now, he won't finish his term. The way he's going about it, he's not going to finish his term. That country is swimming in a pool of poverty. They can't afford basic things like health, primary health. They can't afford basic things like proper education with infrastructures. He gets money to go and give to people who are not deserving of such money. It's a sellout position. It's unsustainable. He's reversing the gains of the revolution. And very soon, the people of Zimbabwe will turn on him, and he will have nowhere to hide. We don't agree with him. They don't deserve any compensation. And therefore, anyone who compensates them for a stolen land is a sellout. So Mnangagwa is a sellout. He must know that in his bed, he's a sellout. We thought he was going to breathe a fresh air in Zimbabwe, but he's continuing to be worse than what we had experienced before. It's a sellout. You must know that.
So are you saying that anyone in South Africa who compensates white people for their land, as what Mnangagwa is currently doing now, is also a sellout?
White people are put by you in your mouth. Anyone who compensates for the expropriation of land is a sellout, black or white. In South Africa, we're expropriating land and giving it to the state to be the custodian of the land, black or white. And you know who's got the land. So there are no black people with the land. So in our mouth, we don't say white. So you run a risk of sounding racist. Careful. Black or white. The land shall be expropriated and the state shall be a custodian. Anyone who compensates is a sellout.
There you have it. That is the soundbite that we were playing for you of Mr. Malema, and he was saying that he feels that the expropriation of land and the paying of white farmers in Zimbabwe is like reversing the gains of freedom. And we wanted to find out from Mr. Mapesa, because I'm caught in this conversation to say that you look at MDC when they were coming to power. I'm going to quote a statement by Morgan Tsvangirai in the year when he was asked in year 2001. He was asked the question that, what do you think about the land reform program? He said, Mugabe has no long-term strategy on the land, neither does he have a plan. What he has done, he has put forward a tactical position. You cannot have a government which deliberately says this law apply and this does not apply. The government land reform program cannot be successful unless it empowers the people economically and leads to sustainable economic development. On the contrary, the opposite happened. This is the quote by the late Mr. Dr. Richard Morgan Tsvangirai, who was the leader of MDC back then. And then you find out that a few months ago, when this was tabled in the National Assembly, the leader of the vice president of MDC came out and he said that the statutory instrument that has been gazetted is a travesty to the people of Zimbabwe, because it is saying that the government has the power to offer people 99-year leases. They can give them land using offer letters, and by so doing, what they mean is that they don't need a new law to put into place for them to give white farmers who might be willing to return to Zimbabwe in order to resume farming. But maybe one thing that is kind of like a sticking point here is that you know that a lot of people got into these places and they occupied land. They didn't have the machinery, number one. Number two, they didn't have the know-how of how to use the machinery. And the third thing was that they didn't have the capital. They didn't have, no bank was willing to finance their operations, which was kind of like different from the white farmers who were owning the land. They had the access to the funds, they had the know-how, they knew the ground very well. So they had a production. And when people got into these places, a lot of people, they didn't have those facilities. And even though they had the facilities, they misused them because they didn't have the experience. So some would say that they had the opportunity, but they could not use it because the government did not chip in and help the people or allocate people according to their ability. So that is one of the things that I also wanted Mr. Mandaza to answer for me. And then the other issue that I wanted answers for was that, you know, that we talk, the ZANU-PF government, I was with Mr. Mandaza last year at the US Embassy when they were protesting against the illegal sanctions with other ANC cadres. And they were talking the same thing, they saying that the sanctions are stalling the economic situation in Zimbabwe, and they are stopping the government of Zimbabwe from borrowing, and the financial institutions are not willing to come on board and help Zimbabwe, like IMF and even other financial bodies that are outside Zimbabwe. And they talk of the sanctions that have been imposed, the Zidera sanctions, to be illegal. But we understand from what we have right now is that the occupancy that is there, where people have gotten into the land, it's illegal because they do not have the title deeds. The government did not revoke those title deeds. People had 99-year leases, they had offer letters, but they did not revoke the title deeds. So that means that somewhere, something is not right. People were occupying the land saying that we've gotten our land back, but they did not have the title deeds. So they were occupying the land illegally. So my question is that you are asking for the removal of sanctions, but you also have illegally occupied the land. And you also understand that in 2006, there was a ruling that happened by the SADC court, which ruled in favor of the white farmers and said the white farmers are supposed to be compensated, but the government of Zimbabwe was having none of that. And that is why the sanctions were prolonged. We know that Morgan Tsvangirai, at some point when he was in the government of national unity, he requested that the sanctions be removed. But right now we're seeing that people are moving in a different direction. The CBZ that was under sanctions for quite some time, now it has been removed from sanctions. Their debt has been written off. We see an appointment of somebody like a white guy who is now appointed, yet we know that CBZ for the past, in time immemorial, it was being the managing director, the CEOs were black. So that leaves me with a lot of questions. Why was it that we were fighting, and in Zimbabwe, as like people were saying, it's the MDC that has brought in the sanctions, and the MDC were saying the other. I'm hoping that Mr. Mandaza is back. Okay, Mr. Mandaza is back. We're gonna continue for the next 10 minutes. Mr. Mandaza, welcome back.
My sincere apologies. My network did me some disservice.
All right. Okay, you were continuing on that point of saying that in the late 90s, that's when there was a bone of contention with the war veterans coming in and saying that we want our land back. And then we saw in year 2000, that's when the fast track started happening. Can you admit that the process was flawed and it's something that could have been done in a better way, the land reform program, when it happened in the early 2000s?
I will not say that the process was flawed. What we admit to is that it could have been done better.
All right.
Like I said, there was no precedence. There was no formula that should have been used in order to acquire land. And as a result, we ended up doing it the way we did it, which we felt that was for the betterment or to the best advantage of the people who wanted to get land, who were the black majority. Yes. And it did not necessarily select who should get land, because you would recall that quite a number of people went on various pieces of land, and I also went to a piece of land, but eventually we had to relinquish or leave it to those whom at that particular time thought that they would produce on the pieces of land. But obviously, there are many other areas that needed to be attended to, which I think should have been done better. And even as we look at the land audit at the moment, it should seek to rationalize and correct some of the anomalies that arose from the fast track land redistribution. Among them is multiple ownership and others taking land for speculation and so on. Those are the issues that need to be addressed.
Okay, then let's look at, I was talking here and I was saying that last year, maybe before we even get to that, in 2006, there was a ruling by the SADC court, which gave a ruling that the government of Zimbabwe was supposed to compensate the white farmers. And I know that the government of the day did not adhere to that ruling, and it led to the extension of the sanctions. My question, Mr. Mandaza, is that you know that last year I was with you at the American embassy and we were protesting about the illegal sanctions that have been imposed on Zimbabwe by America. And my question is that why is it that we had people who would occupy the land illegally, they were given offer letters instead of having the title deeds revoked so that they can have their land because they are the rightful owners of the land? Why was that process not done in a way which will allow people the title deeds to be revoked so that we can say, I am at this place legally? Because I'm just asking in the sense that why did you want the sanctions to be removed, which we said they were illegal, yet we had people who were occupying the land illegally. The title deeds were with other people.
Well, when we look at sanctions, we know, all of us, those who admit that the sanctions are illegal and they should not have been put on Zimbabwe, because these were put in on Zimbabwe in order because the Americans connived, or in connivance with the British, decided to punish Zimbabwe for taking their land. And that is the prime reason why they decided to put sanctions on Zimbabwe. They were angry that Zimbabweans took their land back. Yes, we are saying that the issue of land could have been handled better, but Zimbabwe land belongs to the state. And as a result, the state decided to say that those who are on land, they should be given 99 leases. And the only challenge that was there at the beginning was the issue of confidence on the bankability of the 99-year lease which had been given to the people. And I think the government is working on making sure that the 99-year leases are bankable. They can be used as collateral by those who would want to go to banks and get money. That was the crunch, I think, on the issue of land. You recall that even when we go to rural areas, the pieces of land that we have in the rural areas, they still belong to the state. And they are held in trust by the traditional leaders. But predominantly or primarily, the land belongs to the state. That's why they are given 99-year leases. The question should be on the bankability or the use of these 99-year leases as collateral when people decide to go and get money from banks.
Okay, but on that point, Mr. Mandaza, why was it not given? Like, my question, my cry is that as a black farmer, I feel like we were not given enough resources in order to be able to farm adequately. Mainly because you look at, we didn't have the know-how. Some people went into the farms. They didn't have the knowledge. Some they didn't have they could not approach the banks and say, this is my piece of land as collateral. Why did not the government give them to those people so that they could be able to go to the bank and say, there is my piece of land I've been given by the government. I want a loan from the bank so that I can be able to farm and produce to the bread basket of the nation.
I agree with you 100% in the sense that with respects to the desire by the government to have its people produce on the farms, they should have ensured the people that they have got skills, they have the capital, and they have the machinery which is needed. But bear in mind the fact that we are coming from a period where the government that was supposed to provide money for the acquisition of the land and compensation of the whites from whom land was being taken, and the imposition of sanctions meant that the government did not have the resources to capacitate those people that were going on land. Given that we had types of people that were going on land, those who needed to be on small leaseholds where they could farm for their subsistence. And we also had people that were going on large tracts of land to farm for food security in the country. And most of them, like you have said, did not have the skills, did not have the capital. And the government at that time had sanctions imposed. Therefore, it could not roll out a program that should make sure that we have the kind of productivity that we needed. But we should also commend the government to a greater extent, because in the midst of all these challenges, they tried to provide the little that they could, which possibly was not enough to ensure the kind of food security that we needed in the country. And the other contentious issue that also began to emerge, where we now have people that are going on pieces of on these pieces of land, and they are going into cash crops. You have quite you would go into large pieces of land. People would want to go to Mbare Musika with their cabbages and so on. They negated those crops which are needed in order to bring in the foreign currency to ensure that there is food security and so on. But I think that yes, the issue of skills and capitalization of those that had gone on farms played also a greater part. But the government could not do anything because it now had the sanctions imposed on it. It had no way it could get money, and we got to a point where it had to be the responsibility of those that were on the farms to capacitate themselves so that we could ensure productivity, which was very difficult, save for few people.
All right, sir. Right now, I'm told that the farmers who are coming back, the 3.5 billion, they are going to raise it themselves. That was according to Ambassador Arikana Chiwombori. That's what she said, that the farmers are going to raise the 3.5 billion and then come back to the farms. Maybe it's my thinking. I'm asking, do you think it's fair for us to say we are the owners of the land, but we are not given the same opportunity to say, why didn't the government raise funds somewhere in order to capacitate the black farmers, or else they could have acquired the state and use it as the state and put people that are going to use the land so that they can be food security. I understand there was command agriculture, but My question is, I feel like it's unfair for the black child.
Well, you see, there are certain issues that we can debate and argue for a very long period of time. If
Yes.
there is a constitutional provision,
yeah,
that is that those from whom land was taken, they should be compensated. Honestly, we cannot begrudge the incumbent for ensuring that that constitutional provision is adhered to, especially given the extent that people would want to make sure that legislation is in line with what is in the new constitution. We are the Zimbabweans who sat down during the constitution making process and allowed the inclusion of section 295, which provides for the compensation of those whites for the improvements on the farms. And now that the government had decided to ensure that they come up with some modalities of making sure that these are compensated, and come up with this global agreement that they are reached, where they agreed on the quantum and agreed on the modalities in which the funds are going to be fundraised, in which the government is not going into its own fiscus to get money from the taxes of people and pay them. I think we should commend our government for coming up with that. But we also need to unlock funding. We need to unlock funds, which should make sure that we begin also to provide funding for our own farmers. I agree with you that it is a responsibility, like what happens in the world, in some countries in the world, where they also provide loans, like what used to happen with these eruditions. They used to get huge amounts of money from banks.
Yes.
So they can farm on the land. And until such time that our banking system has enough money to provide to the farms, until such time that our agriculture bank has enough money, we will have probably few individuals accessing that money. Yet there are quite a number of us blacks who are now on pieces of land, including youths, whom I feel they should be given the opportunity to get these large amounts of money and get the skills and go on the pieces of land, because it is only through farming that many of us can see ourselves improving our lives. So I agree with you. We need to capacitate our people, but we must, as government, go all out to make sure that we find those money in the midst of these sanctions that have been imposed on us.
Okay. Do you think that this move, because I'm seeing that the CBZ, their debt has been written off, and I'm seeing that the UN is now starting to speak about the sanctions. They said that the reason why we don't have food security in Zimbabwe. Do you think that this move by the government is going to make America lift their sanctions against Zimbabwe?
Any reasonable country and organization that had imposed sanctions on Zimbabwe should begin to see the sincerity of the new dispensation in making sure that they right some of the missteps that we had in the past, and ensure that they remove the sanctions. And one of the things that the government has done right now is this issue of coming up with an arrangement in which the farmers will be compensated. And it is now supported by the issue that we have seen now, people using it for expedience or political mileage. The issue of the BIPA that we compensating the whites, giving them opportunities to get the pieces of land that they have. These are some of the agreements and arrangements that are enshrined in the constitution and legislation that has been passed with the support of almost every representative of Zimbabwean in government. And we should therefore thank our government for heeding the call of making sure that they begin to walk the talk and induce the kind of confidence that is needed from foreign partners that would want to come and invest in Zimbabwe, bearing in mind that the security of their investment should be guaranteed. And one form of ensuring that it is guaranteed is to making sure that they abide by the dictates of the contents of the BIPA and the BITs that they would have signed.
All right, just these last two questions, Mr. Mandaza, so that we can close up where we are completely out of time. The first question would be, so I know ZANU-PF cadres and even Mr. Patrick Chinamasa, the ZANU-PF spokesperson in Zimbabwe, they once said that it is the MDC that has called for the Zidera sanctions to come to Zimbabwe. But we understand that the Zidera sanctions are much to do with the land, the acquisition of land from Zimbabwe. So my question is, why were we fighting the MDC, knowing that they are not the ones who are responsible for the Zidera sanctions? Why were we name calling them that they are the ones who are calling in for the sanctions? Yet we know that the issue of the land is the bone of contention here. And then maybe probably the last question would be that, do you think that some people are afraid right now, as I'm speaking to you, that they are going to lose their land where they are right now? And what is going to happen to those people? Because I understand, I'm from Sanyati, and I know there are some people who do not have those offer letters. They just occupy the land. And I know in the place called Kain, Mugabe, somewhere there are people who are staying there and they don't have those offer letters. Are they going to be forcefully removed from their places? And what is going to happen to them after that? Some of them, they are now grown up. They cannot be moved from places to places. What is going to happen to them? Because there is that fear.
Let me start by the issue of sanctions. It is common knowledge. It's something that we can also debate for a very long period of time. It is true that MDC called for sanctions, and they continue to do it every day. If they are not responsible for the calling of sanctions, let them come out and call for the lifting of the sanctions in public, like many other people have been doing. How many of you have heard anyone from the MDC calling for the lifting of sanctions, with the exception of Mutambara, who at on a global stage indicated that why should the United States of America and its allies continue to impose sanctions on Zimbabwe, yet they no longer serve their purpose because they were now in government.
Yes, that part I understand.
And said these sanctions were meant to benefit us, and now that we have benefited, why should they continue? And the clip is being played many times on social media to remind people that sanctions were called by our fellow Zimbabweans. And even recently, it is on record that one of the vice presidents of MDC wrote a letter to the IMF and said Zimbabwe should not get any funding in terms of COVID. So it's not a myth that MDC has a hand. The question that we might debate is how strong is the hand and influence in the issue of the sanctions. But they are there, and they cannot deny that. If they were to deny it today, let them come on a public forum like this one and denounce sanctions and call for their lifting today or even tomorrow. On the issue of fellow Zimbabweans who are on land, one of the most important things is that let us regularize our stay on these pieces of land that we have. If we are all entitled to have some form of lease, which is in the form of the 99-year lease. Let us visit the departments responsible for that to regularize, like any other Zimbabwean. You are expected to do that. ZANU-PF does not intend to forcibly remove people from land that they've acquired without following the dictates of the laws that have been crafted, which are supported by the legislators that we have put in parliament. So there is no reason why people should fear if they go the legal route of making sure that they officialize their stay on the pieces of land. what the government is condemning, which almost every right-thinking person should condemn, is where we begin to see people going on new pieces of land or occupying a piece of land without the requisite documents that are required. I think in the document that was read recently, one of the requirements is that let us go visit offices and make sure that we regularize our stay by getting the 99-year leases. The land reform program is where we sit as ZANU-PF, as crafted in our manifesto, is irreversible. As indicated in the constitution, it cannot be reversed. And there is no fear among Zimbabweans. There should not be any fear among Zimbabweans with regards to the issue of land, because we believe it is the reason why many people died, and we do not want to see them or to hear that they are turning in their graves because of acts or actions that we would have done, which are tantamount to reversing the land reform program.
Maybe before I let you go, Mr. Mandaza, is everyone in ZANU-PF happy with this move, or is just a few? Because I heard that there are some people who are not happy with this move of compensating white farmers. And I think maybe you were off air when I played a clip by the EFF leader, Mr. Julius Malema, and he was saying that the compensation of white farmers, it's reactionary, and it's kind of like it's a sellout for ZANU-PF. What is your thoughts on that?
Well, for Julius Malema, he says so because his push is that land should be acquired in South Africa using the same model that we used in Zimbabwe. But we are saying South Africans, if they are going to do their land reform program, they should learn from the good and the mistakes that we did as Zimbabweans. They should not take it wholesome, because it disturbs the whole food chain value, the whole production chain. Once you disturb the agricultural sector, you are likely to disturb other sectors. So they should learn and take the good things and leave those bad things that we did. We are the pioneers of the land reform, and we should be credited for what we did, and people should begin to learn from that. And there is no reason, like I've indicated, that people should be afraid that their pieces of land will be taken. This move that the government has taken is to make sure that they address the issues that they have to do with constitutional provisions that were agreed to by the majority of Zimbabweans. You spoke about people in ZANU-PF. Are we in agreement? Are we in agreement? Like in any organization where democracy should prevail, the majority speaks louder. And if there are few people who had a divergent view, now that the majority have agreed to make sure that what is provided in the constitution is done, they need to toe the line and make sure that they support this move that the government has done. But I would like to believe that the majority of us who are in ZANU-PF are in agreement with the move that the government has taken to address constitutional issues as well as those that are in our manifesto. Remember, the issue of compensating whites, those from whom we got land, is there in the manifesto of 2018. And if you are a true ZANU-PF cadre, you should not therefore question because you ran the course in 2018 using that manifesto.
All right, Mr. Mandaza, we're going to have to leave it there. There is a question here by Kenneth Uzande. From settler to settler, there will be no peace until land is given to the rightful owners. Take my words, all what is happening is a joke. That is from Kenneth Uzande. And there's another lady, Bliss Moshes. It's like the land reform program benefited some. So I think they give white farmers the land. If they give the white farmers the land, it might also boost the farming scheme in the country. Maybe it would be good, to be a good idea. On that note, say thank you so much for being part of this conversation and for responding to us on such a short notice, because there was that fear in people that they are going to lose their land now that this has been gazetted, when the Minister of Lands and Minister of Finance came out yesterday. But thank you so much for joining us today.
Before we go off air, I think it is important that we take less of what is peddled on the social media platform, because we use some of these things that happen for expedience and to gain political mileage. The issue of land reform was done by ZANU-PF, and there is no reason why we can reverse it at any given time. Those who got land will remain on their pieces of land, and the government will continue to make sure that they regularize through the land audit to make sure that we all have somewhere to put our heads on. Thank you so much, and we hope we will be talking or chatting later.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Mandaza. We really appreciate for your time. That was Mr. Kennedy Mandaza, the ZANU-PF spokesperson for South Africa, giving us his thoughts on the story of land in Zimbabwe. And we hope that, are you satisfied with what you are saying? Because some of you came to my inbox and you're saying that you are scared that you might lose your land. And he's assuring the people, the public, that there is no one who's going to get their land taken from them. On that note, we have to end it there. But this has been the program, and please tell us what you think on the comment section. Do you think that people are not going to lose their land, like what other people are saying these days, that it will end in tears? Will it not end in tears? That is the question. We are going to live to see that. But thank you so much for being part of the show. Please follow us on Facebook, JCTV Zimbabwe. Follow us on Twitter, JCTV Zimbabwe. On Instagram, JCTV Zimbabwe. This has been your boy, JC, reminding you that rise up, Africa. The world is waiting for you. I'll see you next time.